Alright, get a paper and a pencil ready for this little activity. I know you've done something like this before. You're going to write the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, obviously we're going to be covering some stereotypes. You may have already watched those videos. If not, when you watch the videos later you can see how close you got to the same things the other people came up with. But remember, this is something that only you're going to see. You don't even have to turn it into me, so you don't have to be polite or worry about what other people are going to think. Just be honest. Write the first thing that comes to mind. Arabic or Middle Eastern people. African Americans. Japanese people. Australians. White people. Jewish people. British people. Chinese people. Americans. Russians. Canadians. French people. Now look back over the list that you just wrote. Were some really easy, really quick, came right out? Did others take a minute or a second to think about? Were there any that you didn't come up with things for? Now, if you haven't already, when you watch the video that has some stereotypes where they're interviewing other people, see if you came up with some of the same things they did. They struggled with stereotyping white people, but is it different to stereotype just white people than when I said Canadian or Australian or American or British? Did that make it easier? Were those categories similar to each other? Were they different? When you considered American, did you think white or did you think something else? Some other things to consider. If you are a minority or if you are a white majority, you may have processed some of the information differently. For example, when we start talking about stereotypes, did you immediately think of your own, the one that you fit into, and wait to hear that category? Or did you immediately think of everyone else? It's likely that if you are white, that you, when you hear the word stereotype, you immediately think of everyone else. However, if you are a minority, then it's likely that when you hear the word stereotype, you immediately think of yourself. So consider a few things about stereotype. We're going to look at stereotype now in connection with The Good Soldier. The Good Soldier is written by Colin Powell, and it has a lot in there to do with race and stereotypes. You need to determine how those things are used and what they can apply to. This is a very important reading because it is one of only 2 options for the readings to base your second essay on. Think about the connotation and the denotation of race and stereotypes. Connotation being what you think of when you hear a word versus denotation being the dictionary definition. Race and stereotypes are often so combined, but they're not the same thing. Sometimes we talk about overcoming our race. Do you really want to do that? Or do you want to embrace your race and overcome a stereotype? Are stereotypes ever a good thing? Is race a positive or a negative, or both, or neither? Are stereotypes positive, negative, both, or neither? In what ways, in various stories, have they been used to accomplish a purpose? Consider stories that may use stereotypes. Consider stories that fight or perpetuate and whether those stereotypes are used on purpose or on accident. Colin Powell discusses his response to the way people perceive him and how they immediately call him the Black Secretary of State, and rather he wants to be known as the Secretary of State who is black. Notice the difference. What comes first? Your position, your individual identity, or something that you're stereotyped by? Or, in other words, your race first, or who you individually are first? He was the Secretary of State, who happened to be black. But he also pointed out that nobody has ever called anyone a white Secretary of State. But because he's a minority and that makes him unique in his position, he was known as the Black Secretary of State. But that's not what he wanted. But that's not the only thing he pointed out. He wasn't trying to minimize too much his race, was he? And he also pointed out that he wanted people of various races to be role models. He mentioned the Russian general. Is this because he's another race or just another person? How important is the race? Do we want multiracial examples, or do we just want examples? What is the line that he's trying to draw? Stereotypes are everywhere, in movies, in stories, and in everyday lives. Now, you need to think about some stories or some movies that stereotypes are present in, and whether they're there on purpose or on accident, and whether they are glamorizing or belittling, and whether there are any positive aspects of using them or all negative. We use stereotypes so much, they can't all be bad, right? Or can they? You consider some stories and movies and choose one and think about how stereotypes and or race is used in that story, and think about it and how it can apply to this article. What would Colin Powell think of it? How would he respond to it? And this is what it's all leading up to. This story is one of the 2 stories that you can choose from to base your second essay on. If you use The Good Soldier, the option that you can write about is this: analyze the use of race and or stereotype in a popular story or movie of your choice, and base your analysis on the reading of Colin Powell's The Good Soldier. So like I said, consider some stories or movies that contain stereotype. It might be easiest to go with race, but you don't have to stick with racial stereotype. There are many other types of stereotype. And then analyze the use of it in the story. Does it fight it? Does it perpetuate it? Does it use it on purpose? Is it just slipped in there out of habit? Analyze all the aspects of it and base your analysis on the comments made by Colin Powell.